Have you ever heard of the old game that which one doesn't belong? One of these things just doesn't belong. Like there, you get four options, and one of them is not the answer, and all of that. Well, I feel that sometimes the Indiana Pacers check off the mark when it comes to their ABA affiliates, the Nuggets, the Spurs, and the Nets. Although it must be said that, what I'm thinking is the Pacers are the only ABA non-ABA team ever to not win a championship. But the fact of the matter is that I'm wrong because it's the Nets. They've never won in New Jersey / Brooklyn. So of course, I'm not a take two type of guy. So anyhow, injuries sometimes are very hurtful in a game seven of a series. I mean, how often do you see somebody injure themselves in a game seven? In NHL history, I don't recall someone with a massive injury in game seven. Football doesn't have a game seven, so we can't talk about that. Baseball, well, baseball does have a major example. Game seven in 1960, when the Yankees placed the Pirates. In the eighth inning, Tony Kubek out in the field took a choppy ball that went off the dirt and hit him in the throat, meaning he had to come out of the game. Fortunately for Kubek, he would be fine because he played a few more years and became a color commentator for both NBC and the Blue Jays. But Game 7 injuries can be very harsh, and the Indiana Pacers just suffered that this year. Obviously, I had to save the Pacers, what if, for, the end of the day because, the Pacers were in the NBA Finals in real life. But anyway, let's tell not of the 2025 Pacers who would be disqualified from the what ifs because they made the finals in the first place, but about a team that should have made the finals and possibly would have given them back to back finals appearances. We're talking about the 1999 Indiana Pacers. We're playing basketball sims. We're playing basketball sims. He's playing what if NBA? Cutter's doing what if NBA? Yeah. Oh, all the teams around the world got to know that the Raptors are number one. But what about the Bulls, Wizards, and Pistons? They all have great what ifs, stories about old teams like the Kansas City Kings and maybe even the Minneapolis Lakers. But we all know we're going to do some basketball. He's doing basketball. He's doing basketball. What if? Cutter's doing what if NBA? So what if NBA? Admittedly, I don't know too much about the Indiana Pacers with their rich history and all that. Indiana is a pretty good basketball college program, and of course, in the pros and high school, like they have this major tournament. Heck, Hoosiers, one of the best basketball movies of all time, centered around the high school tournament and all of that. The fact of the matter is that the Pacers were once an ABA team, a part of the American Basketball Association, a league which akin to the NHL's World Hockey Association and the NFL's American Football League, were strict competitors to the status quo, to the big boys, and all that. The ABA lasted 9 years and had some great innovations. They had the three-point shot, they had dunk contests. Well, they had dunking because in college you couldn't dunk, you get technical foul. And they had the red, white, and blue ball. Of course, that was kind of stupid, but whatever. So anyway, the ABA came through and brought four teams to the forefront. The Nets, who played in New York, had to move to New Jersey because of the indemnity payment to the city of New York. And then they're off in Brooklyn. The the Spurs, who were in San Antonio, and the Nuggets in Denver. They all made there, alongside the Pacers, of course. The Pacers actually nearly went bankrupt because they had to pay the expansion fee and they were losing money hand over foot. They had to have what is known as a telethon. Do you remember telethons, boys and girls? Well, if you're under 21, you will not know what a telethon is. Well, a telethon is basically a TV show in which people are raising money for charity or for other causes. Of course, the Pacers doing a telethon to save their team and to get the money it needed to make the NBA and expansion fees. And they did it. Of course, major telethons were in Canada on Labor Day. We would have the Variety Club telethon on Global. Around Easter, we would have the Easter Seals telethon on CBC. And in the US, of course, who can forget the muscular dystrophy telethon of Jerry Lewis? Yes, the comedian, not the singer. That's Jerry Lee Lewis. The fact of the matter is that the Pacers were alive. The Pacers weren't much in the first decade and a half. Basically, they were just a team that just didn't do too well and were just basically a regional team. Then they got a unknown rookie of the year by the name of Chuck Person, who was a decent player for the University of Auburn, but he smoked the league in 1987 with his rookie of the year tendencies. And then in that same year, they drafted some guy from UCLA who was actually only known in basketball circles as Cheryl Miller's little brother, because Cheryl Miller was this big women's basketball player from USC, basically breaking records left, right, and center in the 1980s. But Reggie Miller blossomed out of his sister's shadow and played his heart out. And he was Mr. Pacer because he never played for a team other than the Indiana Pacers. For 18 years, he would be the heart of the Pacers. The Pacers would also add people like Haywood Workman, Rick Smits, Jamal Tinsley, Chris Mullen, to name a few. In the 90s, they were decent and all of that. Reggie would be shooting the lights out. Rick Smits would be putting up some key clutch defensive moves. And they had a few golden chances to make the NBA Finals. In 1995, they were faced the Orlando Magic in the final, in the conference final. But unfortunately for them, Orlando was Shaq and Penny Hardaway would beat them. They actually did something big in 1998. Although they lost to the Chicago Bulls, they took the Bulls to unfamiliar territory, a game 7. Of course, we talked about the 99 season, and then in 2000, they had all the pieces together. Larry Legend, Larry Bird, who was a native of Indiana, French Lick, decided to coach the team. And what a job he did, leading the Pacers from a weak Eastern Conference to take on the LA Lakers. Pacers-Lakers for the NBA title. Pacers did win a few games, but the Lakers with Shaq and Kobe were not going to be denied. And that was the first of their three-peat. The Pacers would carry on. In 2004, they had a tough conference final against the Detroit Pistons, but few people would know this would be foreshadowing for an ugly incident involving the Pacers and Pistons. Unfortunately, Indiana gets a bad rap because of the whole mouse in the palace thing. When Ben Wallace overreacted to a foul by Ron Artest, of course I'm using the name as it was, and actually shoved Artest. Players from both benches would empty in a sense, try to help their guys out. And Ron Artest, to his credit, radio thing on the Pacers and lied down and actually wanted to de-escalate. It looked good. Unfortunately, some stupid fan by the name of John Green decided to throw a drink at him, and he basically ran into the stands, and then all hell broke loose. Fans and players were fighting. It was a massive black eye on the NBA and all that. Many Pacers got bit. Ron Artest was booted for the whole regular season and playoffs. Jermaine O'Neal had a 25-game suspension, but it was whittled down to 15. Steven Jackson got a massive 25-game suspension, and it ruined the Pacers' momentum. The Pacers were looking like they would try to win the Eastern Conference again. But that killed their momentum and all that. Can't say I blame Artest. I mean, he was trying to stay out of the situation, and it looked like cooler heads were going to prevail. Nevertheless, the Pacers have had some great players in the past, and then the 2025 Pacers shocking everyone by being the 4 seed and sneaking out of the conference, taking care of the 1 seed Cleveland Cavaliers, calling them overrated again, and taking out the New York Knicks, which is ironic because the Knicks and Pacers feature in the 1999 story. Tyrese Halliburton was looking pretty good. Sharpshooter, he was looking good in game 7. And then all of a sudden, no one touched him. Poof, his Achilles goes down. And he's out potentially for the 25-26 season. We'll see. But it's funny how him, Damian Lillard, and who was the other guy who wore number 0? Oh, Jason Tatum are all gone with Achilles injuries and could miss the 25-26 season. Wow, that was huge. And no one touched Halliburton. Well, he did have an ankle problem. Unfortunately, without Halliburton, the Pacers faltered. I kind of had a hunch. The Pacers could have won the title if Halliburton was healthy. Just saying, even though I picked the Thunder to win. So anyhow, let's take a look at the 1999 Pacers. So the 99 Indiana Pacers, their 23rd franchise as an NBA team, and the 32nd as a franchise, as a real franchise because of the ABA. But they don't. You can kind of call it the 98-99 season, but you can technically call it the 99 season. You'd be right because there were no games played in the year 1998 for that season. They started February 5th and had a 50-game season. The NBA, I believe, was the last of the four sports leagues to have a lockout, cut a season, like a season shortened due to a lockout. Baseball had that in 94. We all know about that. Football had it in 82 and 87. Contrary to popular belief, they only played 15 games in 87, not the full 16. 82, of course, they only played 9. And hockey was 94, 95 when they played 48 games. Nevertheless, the Pacers were a heavy favorite because MJ left the Bulls and management broke up the Bulls and all that. So they picked up Sam Perkins, who played in the NBA Finals with the Lakers and the Sonics in 96. The Pacers got off to a fast start. They've been the number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. Reggie Miller was good as always. Rick Smits providing points, and Chris Mullin and Jalen Rose coming off the bench, 11 points per game. Antonio Davis before he was a Raptor. I think this was the season. Yeah, this was his last season with the Pacers, and then got traded to Toronto because the Pacers wanted the high school player Jonathan Bender. We all know that trade was lopsided for the Raptors. Ha ha. Anyway, Dale Davis and Travis Best off the bench. The Pacers in the playoffs took care of Milwaukee quite easily, and then the Sixers. So they were in the Eastern Finals. They had not lost a game. They would take on the New York Knicks, who were shockingly in the conference finals because they were the 8th seed, beat the Raptors for that thing, and then beat the Knicks on the running jumper by Allen Houston, in which Gus Johnson famously did the radio call, but called it 0.8 seconds left. Running jumper! Anyway, in game 3, Antonio Davis fouled Larry Johnson, who hit a 3-ball and then made the free throw for the 4-point play. But it was controversial because the replays did show that Larry Johnson took a step before taking the shot. Well, he got fouled and then he took a step, then hit the 3-ball, which would have been a null and void 3-pointer because of the fact that, it was after the foul. But the Pacers blew it to the Knicks in 6 games, and it was just terrible and all that. But karma bit the Knicks in the butt. They lost to the Spurs in 5. It would have been amazing because we would have seen Pacers versus Spurs, and it would have been the first time that we would see an all ABA final because those 2 teams were in the ABA. The Pacers would move out of Market Square Arena and play at the Conseco Fieldhouse where they are right now. So anyway, yeah, and Antonio Davis was traded to the Raptors. They only made 1 draft pick, and that was Al Harrington, which wasn't a bad pick. When you could still pick people from high school. They had Travis Best, Austin Crozier, Antonio and Dale Davis, no relation. Al Harrington, Mark Jackson, Derek McKee, Reggie Miller, Chris Mullin, Sam Perkins, Jalen Rose, and Rick Smits on their squad. 33 wins. They tied the Heat and Magic for first place. I don't know how the Heat got first place. What type of tiebreak? I think it was head-to-head. It had to be head-to-head because I can't think of anything else. But anyway, yeah. Orlando also won 33 games. Wow, Orlando was getting good. No, the Raptors weren't that close. They were 4 games back, but Charlotte was 9th. Okay. Yeah, I think it was their head-to-head. So anyway, first round against the Bucks. They had to go to overtime against those pesky Milwaukee Bucks. but they took them out in the Midwest battle. In the Eastern semis against AI and the Sixers, they took them down. It wasn't half bad. Like the Sixers only got blown out by double digits once in 4 games. So it wasn't that bad. And then the Eastern Finals, they lost game one at home to New York. Then they won game two. And then they went to New York, split those 2 games, but couldn't win on home turf to save their lives. And that was critical because they lost game six in New York. So like, let the fun begin. So that's how we got to the 99 Pacers. What would happen if the Pacers did face the Spurs in the final? Let's find out. So anyway, the Pacers would face the Spurs. The Spurs would have home court because they won 37 games. The Pacers won 33. You know, the Spurs trying to win their first NBA title in history. Game one. And it would be the Spurs 87-83. As the Spurs knew what to do. In game one, Tim Duncan, 23 points, 13 rebounds. 21 from Reggie, 14 from Mullen, 12 from Smith. Dale Davis and Mark Jackson were also starters. 10 points from Antonio and 20 minutes off the bench. Jalen Rose did well off the bench for 7 points. Travis Best, Sam Perkins, Austin Crusher, and Derek McKee. For the 99 Spurs, Duncan, 23, 18 from Mario Ellie, former sharpshooter for the Rockets. Then Sean Elliott with 16. Elliott. Dave Robinson, 9 points. Avery, 5. The bench, Darren Jackson, Antonio Davis, Malik Rose, Will Purdue, former Bull, Jerome Kersey, and Steve Kerr, former Bull. So yeah, the Bulls got rid of their players and all that. They dismantled their team without MJ. Kind of crappy, don't you think? Game two saw the Pacers win thanks to Dale Davis's defensive efforts. Reggie put up 22 points. Jalen Rose put up 19 off the bench. He was the second highest point getter on the Pacers. Davis, Best, Perkins, Crusher, McKee, Harrington, Hoiberg, and Pope off the bench. Mark Pope, eh? Spurs, 20 points from Duncan, 18 from Robinson. Kersey, Jaron Jackson, Purdue, Rose, Daniel, Steve Kerr, Gerald King, Andrew Gaze, the man from Australia, who was a great point getter in the Olympics for them, and Brandon Williams. Who was we? Oi, oi, oi. Game 3. Fight. Spurs going to Indiana and got the revenge, 30 points, 10 rebounds by Mr. Duncan, 18 from Avery. Sean Elliott only scoring 2 points. He didn't even have a foul. Yeah, Antonio Davis had 9 points to outscore him, and Malik Rose had 7. Yeah, Reggie Miller, 13 for the Pacers. Only him and Smith were in double digits for the starters. Jalen off the bench, 29 minutes. 29 minutes up here. 29 minutes up here. Game 4 sees the Pacers get revenge 101-89. Mark Jackson did his job. Duncan was held to 14 points. Avery Johnson to 3 points. He was held. Will Purdue had 14 points in 15 minutes. And that was the most by a Spur. Jaron Jackson had 10 points in 18 minutes. Kersey had no points in 16 minutes. Andrew Gaze did decently. 17 for Reggie up as a starter. Davis and Mullen almost made everyone in double digits, but they missed by a point each. Jalen Rose, 12 points. Going with the NBA's rule at the time, the 2-3-2, so the Pacers will host game 5, and they got their butts handed to them in the third quarter, losing the game 102-74. David Robinson, 20 points, 10 rebounds. Mario Ellie finally putting up points with 21. So the bench, 23 from Reggie, 12 from Vic Smith. Jalen got 8. So anyway, that's all we got. 3-2. Spurs have to go home and win the series, which they don't. The Pacers win 91-80 to force a game 7. Man, no one's running away with this. Reggie with 22, Rick with 20. You get your sharpshooters. 14 from David Robinson, 12 from Sean Elliott. Malik Rose, 10 points in 10 minutes. Game 7. And the Pacers did it. The Indiana Pacers win Game 7. Tim Duncan, 21.16 rebounds, but they lose. The Indiana Pacers use a great first half to win the game 104-92 and shock the Spurs, and they're going to be the champs in a sense. So the Pacers win the 1999 championship in storyline against the Spurs. It's like Reggie Miller's finally got a ring on his finger. So does Mark Jackson, Rick Smits, Chris Mullin even finally gets a ring. Dale Davis, you get a ring, and you get a ring, and you get a ring. Well, Sam Perkins already has a ring. No, he doesn't. I thought he played for the Lakers in the 80s. I don't think Sam Perkins did. Shit, I don't think he did. Yeah, I don't think Sam Perkins played in the 80s. Yeah, 91 he came to the Lakers from Dallas. Ah, okay. Makes sense to me. So yeah. So 12 points from Travis Best off the bench. 21 from Duncan Robinson with 12 points. But somehow, in some way, they failed. I'm actually shocked. But the Indiana Pacers would have won game 7 against the Spurs, and Reggie would have got a ring. So yeah, Indiana would have got the ring and not chase the ring. They're 0-2 in finals. They went to the finals in 2000 and 2025, come up short. But I mean, at least they're not the Phoenix Suns, because the Suns are the worst team in the NBA Finals at 0-3. They lost in 76, 93, and 21. Memorable for rightful reasons. Anyhow, I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.